Hey guys, it's me, Dr. Girard, with a really sore throat. I mean, it's not sore, it just sounds horrible. My daughter graced me with her cold today. Um, but if you guys could tolerate my horrible sound and raspy voice, we have somebody really, really awesome, somebody that really inspired me along with many others, but she continues to inspire me as one of the main administrators of the Wallace Protocol Facebook page. And so Beth Shultz is here, and I'm just going to put up her website so you guys can see. She's just doing great things. Not only is she running the website for the Wallace Protocol in Facebook, but she has her own website, and she's actively treating and guiding patients on nutrition, on things for autoimmunity, multiple sclerosis, Lyme disease, vaccinations. So, we're just going to go to town, and we're going to, she's kind of like me in that she's a straight shooter. I think when you've been through what I'm going through and what she's been through, which we're gonna talk about, I think the only thing you have left is real. So actually, it's kind of ironic that my voice is like this, because it is real. I don't usually get sick, and she just brought up a point to me a second ago and said, well, maybe your immune system is finally strong enough to get sick. I'm like, wow, that just blew my mind. So I'm still kind of thinking about that. But before we get started, I wanted just to shout out to Tony Ferraro, because he just had a big a gala in Buffalo, and he started his own Change MS, multiple sclerosis nonprofit with the hopes of changing MS. And he just ended up day before yesterday, had this big gala event, 4 years in the making. So one person who had MS, and if you look at the pictures, you can see what he's been through. And so Beth is, mirrors his experience, his healing journey. And I just think I'm a fan. So, he's doing great things. We all can do great things with God's help, and, and all. But anyways, without further ado, let's bring on Beth, because she needs to talk, because I can't talk very well. Hey, Beth.
Hi, everybody.
Anyway,
I think your voice sounds great.
Yeah, my wife said it's not a sexy voice, so But anyways, Beth Shultz, you've known her from such places as Facebook, the Wallace Protocol, and you may have run into her Facebook, but she always has great advice. She's always selfless. She's been an inspiration to me as I try to figure out this whole thing. Because to me, when I first started, I've been, trained allopathic, regular medicine. Nutrition for me was taking Centrum, a multiple vitamin. And that was like, I was thinking, well, being really healthy. Yeah, right. I had no idea. And I still don't have an idea. I'm still learning every day along with you guys, but she does have an idea. So, hi, Beth.
Well, what's funny is I really thought I kind of was into natural medicine before I got sick. I believed other people could heal from natural medicine for other things. And then when I got that MS diagnosis, it just seemed so huge and overwhelming and serious that I truly believed nothing natural could work, because doctors would know that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And yeah, I had a friend the very first few months I was diagnosed that said, "Oh, this will be super simple. We'll go gluten-free, dairy-free, and do a parasite cleanse, and you'll be fine." And I was so offended that she thought this serious neurological disease I was diagnosed with could be treated so simply, that I got upset with her. We were no longer friends, not over that, a few other things. But yeah, I just didn't believe food could do anything for such a serious disease. And the doctors definitely agreed with that.
Absolutely. I understand 100%. Uh, is my voice, is everybody, can anybody hear me? Is that like really horrible? All right. I thought I had feedback for a second. Okay. So let's take a step back.
Okay.
You got diagnosed. You weren't into natural medicine. You weren't into food. You weren't into anything. You didn't any training yet.
Well, I wasn't in any training, but I was into natural medicine. My daughter at the time was 5. She had never had antibiotics. She had only had, I think, 1 or 2 ear infections, but I used garlic and mullein oil to heal them. She ate somewhat an organic diet. Um, so I knew something about natural medicine, but I believed my disease was just too bad to touch that.
Okay. So go back now. You're living your life. You live, um, and what happened? You start to feel
Um,
numbness, or what happened?
I lived in Oregon. I was a single mom to well, I guess she would have been 5. We were in Colorado visiting my sister for Thanksgiving, and I got what I believed was a migraine. I started with a headache, and then I lost partial eyesight in one eye, and I figured it was just an ocular migraine. After about a week, when the eyesight didn't get any better, I decided it was time to go to urgent care. Urgent care put me in a room, gave me a migraine injection, left me for 30 minutes, came back and said, "Is it gone?" And I said, "No." And they gave that look and said, "We're going to send you right up to ophthalmology." Ophthalmology said, "This looks like optic neuritis." And optic neuritis is almost always multiple sclerosis. I was floored. Really, I kind of thought MS was you were in a wheelchair.
Yeah, when I heard that, man, I thought it was something to do with Jerry's kids or something. I had no idea. I was clueless.
Hmm.
Okay.
And so
So now go ahead.
they sent me off with my eyes dilated to go pick up my kindergartner at school with no sunglasses, nothing, and just told me I had MS. I got in the car, I drove about 2 blocks and pulled over and just I called a friend first and asked him to pick up my daughter, and then just sat there and cried in just utter shock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was lucky. I got into a neurologist the next day. I had an MRI the next day. There were no lesions on my brain and just one lesion on my eye nerve. So he said, best luck scenario, this is a one-time thing, and I'll never see you again. The optic neuritis lasted 2 months. It went away in 2 months. 3 days later, I lost sight in my other eye.
Complete,
So
complete, complete loss of sight.
no, I shouldn't say that. It was always I could see enough. Usually there would be like a CD when you have put a CD in the sunlight and it's all rainbow circle.
Okay.
I would have those rainbow circles in my eye.
Like you're looking
So
through a
just
prism or something.
yep. So just partial eyesight. I never went completely blind.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty scary.
well, it's just it's weird and it never goes away and there's it's just this constant and it causes such a headache when you can't see right.
Yeah,
Um,
totally, totally. So you said that lasted how long?
The first one was 2 months, and then it went away. And in 3 days, the second eye was out. So back to the neurologist, I went for a new MRI.
Yes.
The new MRI, he was going out of town for a week, so he said I'd have to wait a week, and I kind of threw a fit. And he said, "Well, I can get you in, I guess, right after the MRI. We can talk." So he hadn't looked at the MRI results yet. I go into his office. He has a large screen TV. He pops up the MRI and there's a big white lesion. And he goes, "Look, I was right. You do have MS." And I just looked at him and he was like, "Oh gosh, that wasn't very like, I shouldn't be
Yeah,
excited that I'm right."
little callous, little bad bedside manner.
He didn't have great bedside manner. Very nice guy.
Right.
Um, and then at the time, he also says, you did test positive for Lyme disease 2 months ago.
At the
We
same
never
time.
Yep, we never called you because we don't have Lyme disease in Oregon, so we just didn't believe it. We did send that blood in for a better test. That test too was positive, but we don't have Lyme in Oregon, so we ignored it. We'll
Wow.
test you one more time just to be sure.
And you had you had no target lesion. You had no other symptoms obvious Lyme, other than what, fatigue. I don't, what were you?
Fatigue, and I never had a fever that I know of. At the time, I was so stressed out, I didn't remember the fact that about 6 months before that, I was bit by a deer fly at a lake, not a tick, a deer fly, and I did have a bullseye rash,
You
but I
did.
ignored it because it was a fly.
Okay. Yeah.
But at that time, talking to the doctor about Lyme disease, it didn't even cross my mind. I was under so much stress.
I'm just curious, whereabouts in your body was it? Did that become like a
On
target?
my right eye.
Interesting. Okay, so now the doctor told you have MS and Lyme. Welcome.
Nope, they would not ever admit Lyme disease. They said Lyme disease did not live in Oregon, so it was just a false positive test.
You said you're tested positive.
Yep, false positive.
But don't listen to it. Okay.
Yep. They tested me again. It was positive. They tested me again. It was positive. The health department actually called me at that point and said, "Where did you get Lyme disease?" And I said, "Oh, I don't have Lyme disease because you can't get that in Oregon." And she kind of laughed. She's like, "You don't have 4 positive Lyme disease tests and not have Lyme disease." So at that time, I was given 28 days of doxycycline. My symptoms went away within 3 days.
A high dose doxycycline, no?
Nope, I don't think it was a high dose. I think it was a pretty low dose. Maybe I'm going to guess 200 milligrams, but I'm guessing this was 13 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay, good.
So I had 28 days. I was told by my neurologist that if I could get the 28 days, he wasn't happy about giving them to me because the health department kind of called him in a way and said, "Do you not know how to treat Lyme disease? This lady has 4 tests. You have to treat her." And he didn't like that. So when I got the 28 days, I was told that I was never allowed to say Lyme disease in his office again.
Say that again.
I was never allowed to say Lyme disease in his office again after my 28 days of antibiotics were up.
You're really freaking me out. Okay, go ahead.
So I did the 28 days. I felt pretty good on the 28 days.
Yeah.
They ran out and I got optic neuritis again right away. And then I started losing my balance. It was the first time that I fell, probably a week after the antibiotics ended. I just fell walking. That really scared me. I went to my primary care doctor and she said doxycycline is what they would use for Lyme disease. I give that to teenage kids for acne all the time. "Oh gosh, I see some zits on your face. How about we just write that prescription of doxycycline for the acne on your face?" So I was on antibiotics starting then for years. It wasn't a strong enough dose. It would I felt like it kept things at bay, but yet new symptoms were popping up constantly. Then I started to lose feeling in my arms. My balance was gone. My fatigue was terrible. My cognition was horrible. At the time, I was a bartender at an Applebee's. And I didn't call in sick that often. And I covered every shift that I had when I would see doctors and stuff. And they just didn't like it. So they started changing my schedule and taking away. I was a bartender and would have a full section of tables and make really good money. They took away all my tables, so I couldn't make money anymore. So I gave my 2 weeks notice, and one of my managers admitted that she just couldn't stand looking at me anymore. It broke her heart so much to see me sick that she didn't want to look at me anymore.
Because you were limping, you were obviously hurt, or I mean, like what?
Yeah, it just wasn't me anymore. I was really unrecognizable. I was miserable, depressed. The depression that you get when you think about ending up in a wheelchair and not knowing what the future holds, except you're a single mom whose income is a bartender at Applebee's.
I know the feeling. All
So
right.
I quit. I bought a company actually then. My friend owned a restaurant delivery company and he needed help. So I bought into his company where I could work in a nice, comfortable office and sit down.
Okay. So the whole time eating a regular diet, the standard American diet, just going about your business. Now, did the MS drugs? What was the next step?
I decided to do Avonex. I don't know what it was that made me read the ingredients of Avonex, but I did read the ingredients because I knew you could mix your own or have the pre-mixed, and that just kind of made me wonder what was different about that. Did you know the pre-mixed Avonex has the thimerosal in it, which is mercury.
Did not know that.
Is that not like, and I knew that wasn't a good thing. I knew that from like my research in vaccines when my child was young, that thimerosal was mercury. So I got the mix your own injection. And it was funny. Every month they would send me the pre-mix stuff and I'd have to call and say, I don't want this. And one of the guys, he's like, why don't you want that? It's so much easier. I was like, it's not that hard to mix your own.
Just so everybody knows, a lot of times they use a mercury in the vaccines as a preservative.
Not anymore in kids' vaccines, just the flu vaccine at this point.
Just the flu vaccine.
The one they give everybody.
A wonderful flu vaccine. Yeah. Okay. So you're taking the Avonex, you're getting sick, you're getting the flu-like symptoms.
Oh gosh, it was horrible. And I think
I took Avonex for a long time. I actually was involved in the research with Larry Jacobs and Avonex in Buffalo.
And my shot anxiety, I don't like shots. So that was the worst part. And so I'll be honest, I drank about a bottle of wine every Sunday night for my injection and took Xanax to get through that. My primary care doctor was wonderful. She is just a sweetheart. And she was very concerned about the Avonex when she read suicidal depression as being one of the side effects, and knowing that I was a single mom and I was already depressed. She was great. She asked me if I would just come in once a month and say hi to her, not charge me for an appointment, just say hi on my way to work. And after about 9 months, she was like, I don't know who you are. You're not the Beth that I knew.
Suicide. That's one of the black label warnings for Prozac. So they give you Prozac because you have suicidal, but yet one of the side effects is you could commit suicide. So it blows my mind. So
I think I was on Wellbutrin at that time.
Okay.
Already. I was taking Xanax every day, Wellbutrin, Vicodin every day.
Vicodin. Why? Yeah. You're for pain.
Yep.
So Vicodin is a hydrocodone, which is a painkiller. It's an opioid, highly addictive. I took it every day for 9 years. Yeah.
Except for the 9 months I was pregnant was the only time
Where was your pain, Beth?
Mostly my eyes and just my head.
Like headache, eyes, tension, headache, stuff like that.
My arms, where my arm was numb, was always just like a constant pain here.
That MSy kind of body achy, like horrible feelings. Yeah.
The buzzing, like it felt like my toe was plugged into an electrical outlet, just this constant, and so that was more of what I would take the Xanax for, was just to kind of forget about the buzzing.
At this point, you're under 5 or 6 prescription medications.
Yep, every day. Sleeping pill, the insomnia was horrible. I could not sleep without sleeping pills.
So 6 or 7. 6 or 7.
What was one of the first ones they gave me was like tryptophan, possibly something with the tryptophan in it, and I gained about 50 pounds in a couple months.
Wow.
That one.
Wow. Yeah, tryptophan. That's okay. That's a different thing, but gotcha. So you're taking all the medications. I mean, just by the way, when I decided to go off all my medications, I was feeling depressed. I was this and that. I was doing the Avonex. I was doing all this stuff. And my doctor says, well, now you need Prozac. And I'm like, I can't take any more medications. And he literally almost grabbed me and said, you have a chronic disease. You have to deal with this. You need medications. And and I did Avonex for a long time. I did Copaxone. I did all the allopathic stuff, right? So let's go forward. So now you're on this. You're taking the medications. You feel like crap, right?
When I gave up the Avonex was when I really decided something needed to change. And the Lyme disease question still was never answered.
Just 1 second. How old was your daughter at this point?
I was diagnosed the day before her 6th birthday officially with MS.
Yeah. So now you have all that stress too. I mean, I have 5 kids. I know it's tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
and actually then right around this time was when I met my husband now.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe what man wants to be a single mom diagnosed with MS, fighting for a Lyme disease diagnosis. And he looked at it and he was like, you need me. Why would I run away? You need me.
Let's talk about that a little bit because most people, including myself, have the shame. Like, why would you want to be with me? I'm horrible. I'm broken.
Yep.
I'm like, you deserve better than me. I even told my wife that last week. I'm like, why you stick with, so you met this wonderful man, obviously,
Mhm.
and that's just awesome. So I think, and I talked to a lot of guests and a lot of people now about that. I think mentally we just beat the heck out of ourselves, and we're still beautiful people,
Yeah.
and so that's pretty awesome.
I think my husband is a born caregiver. He really is. He had his brother was born with severe Down syndrome. He never walked or talked. His mother passed away when he was younger, so he spent a lot of time with his younger brother taking care of him. And I think he's just a caregiver at heart. So it didn't scare him that I was sick. He truly did. He just knew that I needed him.
So don't you think this is getting off the topic, but don't you think disease is transformational, like pain is transformational? Like, so for him, for example, him going through and all that, I think there's some growth there. I mean, I know so, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to you. Awesome story though, by the way. But so now you're taking all these meds, you feel like horrible,
Mhm.
and what's the next thing? What's going on?
I go to an MS clinic that decided that we really should figure out. They said you have perfect MS, and I have the ological. I can't even ever say it. Bands in my spine, multiple lesions. My symptoms go every 2 months and
It's from
change.
from your spinal,
Yep.
excuse me, from your
There's
spinal
no Lyme
side.
disease in my spine, which I find is very rare to actually find Lyme disease in the spinal fluid. So the Lyme disease testing, I was so lucky to test positive. Lyme disease testing misses 40 to 60% of Lyme disease.
Okay.
How is that even a passing test? That's failing.
All right. Well, let's take a minute there and let's clarify this because MS and Lyme disease are two separate things. No.
They are, I believe that Lyme disease can trigger MS.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
And so after it was probably a good 2 years, I finally decided to go out to Connecticut, where I heard of a neurologist who treated both Lyme disease and MS and would be very open to looking at this time I had like 6 positive tests from doctors and different doctors. And so I got on a plane and went to Connecticut, and he was just shocked. He was like, how can they ignore these testing results and
Okay.
not do anything about this?
So what was his like a treatment? What was his suggestions or ideas?
He prescribed me 90 days of IV antibiotics. At this time, my neurologist, I had gotten a new neurologist because the first neurologist said I could never even talk about Lyme disease again. And I just thought that was ridiculous. I can talk about anything I'd like to talk about. So
Yeah, that bothers me.
I had a new neurologist, and he agreed that if I went to Connecticut and saw a neurologist that said I had Lyme disease, that he would do what that neurologist said. So I get back to Oregon. I'm so excited. I have a diagnosis of chronic Lyme disease, neurological Lyme disease, and MS. And I have this prescription for 90 days of IV antibiotics. Me and my husband go into the doctors. He's trying to push Rebif on me. And I said, no, I really, and first of all, if I was going to do another MS drug, I want to look at beta seron because the MS doctor in Connecticut told me that they are now paying all copays, and my copay is half. I only have half, which is about $1,500 a month. Beta seron will pay copays, but will no longer kick back a neurologist for prescribing the drug. And he said, oh, you know what? I don't prescribe beta seron anymore. I don't like it.
Well, which is interesting because these are all forms of beta interferon.
Yep.
Beta interferon, Avonex, Rebif, they're all different forms of beta interferon, which are all essentially the same.
But they were no longer going to kick back doctors, and he no longer prescribed it. He had offered it to me months before then. He offered me all 3 of them, beta seron, Rebif, or Avonex were my choices.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, he doesn't prescribe that. So that was, me and my husband were already rolling our eyes. And then I said, you know what, you haven't brought up the Lyme disease. How are we going to get the IV antibiotics ordered and stuff? And he went, oh, that. And he said, I was He's like, that doctor just faxed me his recommendations and didn't call me. And I was so offended by that I can't listen to anything he has to say.
Well, this is back to your original neurologist.
My neurologist at the time. So he wasn't going to help me with the IV antibiotics because he felt offended that the doctor faxed him.
I really don't like this guy.
No, total jerk. We ended up, my husband got bad. Like, we got bad. We started fighting. He followed us out of the office screaming at us, telling us we were never allowed back in after the fight that we had over that.
Yeah, he's got issues.
Yep. So there I am. I have the IV antibiotic prescription and no doctor that will fill it in Oregon.
What was the prescription? What is it better? It was like a Capflex or like what?
Rocephin.
Okay, gotcha.
IV Rocephin. So my primary care doctor agreed to fill it and take care of it, even though she didn't feel she had any business treating Lyme disease.
Fill it, but you also need a nurse to administer it, right? You need that.
Yep, at an IV clinic. So it took about 6 months between insurance and stuff to get them to agree to it, because I believe it was a $30,000 treatment.
Yeah, it's expensive. That's expensive.
Yep. So I got my IV antibiotics, and somehow they messed up and I got about 100 days rather than 90 days. Because they just kind of forgot that I was done and kept doing it. And at that time, I felt really good. I felt like I could live that life forever. I called myself, I was cured, it was over, I was done. I have a new neurologist at this point, of course, and we go in, and she was an MS specialist in Portland that I saw at one time, and she moved to my small little town in Oregon. So her and I did get along very well. She would never talk about Lyme disease. Her theory is I'm an MS specialist. I treat MS. If you have Lyme disease, you need to see a different doctor.
I'm going to put a picture up because this is profound. And I believe this is probably about that time.
No, this would have been at the end. This was maybe 6 months before I decided to try food. The picture of me big.
On the left. Okay, good.
Yep. So that's years into being sick. I got up to probably 220 pounds from started at maybe 140.
Okay. Because that's a profound picture.
Yeah.
All right. So now
after the IV antibiotics, we do an MRI.
Yes.
13 lesions in my brain and spine, completely gone. Guess what my MS specialist says? It's a coincidence. The antibiotics had nothing to do with that.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. And
that would be Lyme disease. So you know what? We just smiled and said thank you, because her and I just kind of had an understanding. We didn't get into it. I couldn't find any more new neurologists. I just had to accept the fact that nobody in Oregon was ever going to talk about Lyme disease and be happy with it. That was when me and my husband got married, and I decided I was good. Nothing else was going to happen. We decided to have a baby. Right after we got married, I was pregnant within 2 months. I was still on pain pills and Xanax because I was an addict at that point, and sleeping pills, but I didn't have optic neuritis or any numb feelings. I did still have a headache. My headache never really went away. I got off all the pills the day I found out I was pregnant, and I just stopped all of them. I had a great pregnancy. I did really feel that I could still have a little bit of Lyme disease, because chronic Lyme disease really can just stay in your body forever.
So you're on pills for 9 years and you just stopped them. Wasn't that a shock to your body?
Yeah. But I did, I was just so happy to be pregnant and married, and I thought the Lyme disease was gone. The MS was pretty much like I didn't feel bad anymore. I was worried, though, that I would pass Lyme to a baby. So I decided that I wanted to do oral antibiotics throughout my pregnancy. The OB refused to prescribe them for me because at the time the CDC's website said that you absolutely could not pass Lyme disease to a baby. I knew from my own research that was not true. So my primary care doctor agreed to prescribe them for me. The OB just said, you're not doing anything good for your baby, but it shouldn't harbor too much. And it's unnecessary, but do whatever you want to do. A week before she was born, the CDC changed their website to say that, yes, mom will pass Lyme disease to baby and should be treated. She patted me on the back very nicely and was like, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. I will do IV antibiotics at the birth. We'll test the baby for Lyme disease right when she's born. And it's very supportive. So we did the IV antibiotics at birth, and she was negative from the testing that we did. And we used a special lab called IGenix out of California that finds much more Lyme disease than any lab
I was going to ask you. Okay.
is going to do. So I really did trust that test that she was good. I was very happy. I had 3 different doctors that worked with Lyme disease all over the country talk to me about my case. Their biggest recommendation for her birth was to never vaccinate her. They said, we just see these babies that are vaccinated that come from moms with Lyme disease don't do well. If you don't vaccinate her, she'll probably be fine. And she's 9 years old and she's fine.
And she's never had a vaccination.
Never had one. She's never had antibiotics. She was grown on antibiotics. I breastfed her on antibiotics. She cried for the first 2 months of her life. My husband sat up in a rocking chair all night long holding her. You could never lay down with her ever. She just cried. Somehow we didn't put that it was the antibiotics.
Colicky and the antibiotics and throwing her gut off and things like that.
Yeah. Her stomach was just a mess. I went back to work when she was 2 months old. My office was in my house, so it was a perfect thing. My husband stayed home with her. I went back to work and in the house, and that day I lost feeling in my legs. Complete feeling in my legs were just gone 2 months after she was born. I walked inside to breastfeed her, and I just started crying. And I said, I can't feed her because you can pass Lyme to a baby. And I just said, I know it's back, and I do not want to give her what I have. We mixed up a bottle of formula, and she had formula all day, and she slept all night long. She was a happy baby.
So let's go a little bit. You felt that those symptoms you're having weren't MS symptoms; they were Lyme disease symptoms.
You know what? I always called my MS Lyme at that point. Once I was diagnosed with it, now I am more at a point. Well, then talking to my doctor in Connecticut, it was Lyme disease triggered multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from the research, it seems that way.
But I was convinced that antibiotics would kill it and it would go away. So then we went right back on antibiotics. Then I got back. I couldn't find a doctor in Oregon once again to treat me. So I got back on the plane and went to Connecticut. That was the worst trip of my life. I left my husband and daughter behind because it's expensive to fly to Connecticut. The doctor only took cash. You couldn't use insurance. Most Lyme doctors do not take insurance. They take cash only. So it's an expensive thing to do. I got there, and actually he tested me again, and it was the first time ever I was negative for Lyme disease. I was positive for chlamydia pneumonia and a whole handful of other viruses and bacteria. And he said, I think we really got rid of the Lyme disease. And now chlamydia pneumonia is also known to cause multiple sclerosis. And there is, through Vanderbilt University, there is doctors doing this research with MS and that. And they have a 3-year antibiotic protocol. It's 3 different antibiotics that you take orally for 3 years. So he prescribed that to me. 3 years later, no better. So we just stayed on those same antibiotics. And I think, my daughter was about 4 or 5 when I just said, I can't do this anymore. I was vomiting every morning. I'd wake up and vomit for 2 hours.
Just about to say that. Your stomach had to be a total mess.
Oh my gosh, such a mess. And so I just gave up. I just said, this is my life. I'll have neurological symptoms for the rest of my life. We've done all the antibiotics. We've tried I think I did decide to go on Copaxone at that time and see if that helped. I didn't really have any negative reactions, but it didn't do anything for me but leave big welts all over my body. And oh gosh, was my skin just ruined. I think I did it for probably a year. I just kind of gave up.
No local injection.
Yeah. And then one day my friend met this crazy alternative healer, and I went with her to her appointment, and she's an iridologist. Have you ever heard of iridology? So they study the iris of your eye and say they can see your past, present, and future health issues. She did my friend, and she was right on.
Yeah.
With my friend. So I went to her, And she said, it's all your digestion. We'll fix your digestion and you'll be fine. And I kind of thought she was nuts, but what did I have to lose?
Absolutely.
So she put me on oh, my daughter wants to say hi. You can say hi real quick.
What's her name?
Come here. This is Ella.
Hi, Ella. She made me scared of my voice. Hi, Ella.
She's on spring break, but she's technically homeschooled anyways, so she's usually always with me.
We have 5 children, and I primarily treated children, towards the end of my career. So,
love you.
Scare with my monster voice.
Kids, they make it all worth it. They really do somehow.
They really do. I mean, there's much of a pain in the butt there. But you know what? I have a 17-year-old, and when they're little, they have little problems, and when they get bigger,
So the iridologist was all about food as medicine, but she was 100% vegan, and vegan was the diet that would fix everything in the world. So we went vegan.
I did that.
And I will admit I felt better because I was eating real food. I was eating all real food, organic, and I felt better. After about 9 months, I could feel I was vegan when I was 20 to 21. I was a vegan, and I got really depressed.
But by doing that, you eliminate all processed foods, no?
Yep. And it's a good cleanse. I think like doing a 30-day vegan diet sometimes can be a great cleanse for some people. Sure. And it's like Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who wrote the GAPS diet, says like the vegan diet is cleansing, and then the omnivorous diet is healing and rebuilding. And
so a vegan is primarily plant-based. Omnivore is plant and meat.
Yeah. Okay. I'm definitely an omnivore.
Okay. But, we could get into the specifics of that, but probably won't have a lot of time. But you know what? There's certain things in meat, and that's what Dr. Walls prescribes, some meat, and not a ton of meat, not like Atkins, because there's certain nutrients in meats that we really need because we're omnivores.
Well, it's like a powerhouse of nutrition, really. Meat has so much in it, and it's so I feel it's funny. Like people are always saying that vegetables or that meat's really hard to digest, and veggies are easier. And I find that so we'll just talk a little poop here. I have never seen a chunk of meat in my poop, but I have sure seen a whole lot of veggies in my poop.
Yeah. John wrote the book Plant Paradox talking about that. Plants don't want to be eaten. Mm-mm. They have protective mechanisms. We're not cows. We can't break that cell wall. So that's what Walls talks about. So if you are, for religious reasons or spiritual reasons, you want to be vegan, it's possible, but it's very difficult.
Yep. And I think it also just goes to how good is your digestion? Can you break down all those plants and get everything out of it? I couldn't. My digestion was ruined. So I started to feel really depressed on that vegan diet. Okay. And I was happy because I was feeling better, but there was just something in my brain I knew was not right. And so me and my mom were watching on Facebook one day, scrolling through on a family vacation, and this TED Talk pops up of a doctor who gets out of her wheelchair. And I was like, oh, let's press play on that. And it was just like, oh my gosh, that's the thing. That is going to be it. This is it. I know I will be fine. Like, I just knew it. I don't know how to even describe like the excitement. And I went the next day. I had a steak, my first steak in like 9 months, and it was so good. I didn't have any hard time digesting it. I did take, because she had me on digestive enzymes that entire time. I had like no stomach acid whatsoever.
Like a pepsin.
It was like just a broad range. It had HCl, pepsin, amylase, like it broke down everything. It did have a tiny bit of dairy in it, which even on the vegan diet. And so like even when I started the Walls protocol, I gave up that enzyme at one time because it's a dairy-free diet, and no other enzyme I found worked that good. So I did go back. I think it's just such a minuscule amount.
And it may not even be a lactose component. So, okay. So you're still on the meds at the
No. I was it was probably 4 or 5 months into meeting my iridologist. We went to her house one day. Actually, I should have went into this, and she said, I want you to do a 10-day master cleanse, which is only drinking lemon water with maple syrup and cayenne pepper for 10 days.
Awesome.
And I was like, oh gosh, that sounds terrible. And she's like, and then also you're going to do daily colonics. I was like, oh gosh, this sounds super bad.
So, the 10 days, how did you do with that? Because you were sick. So when you're sick and you do a 10-day, how would you tell us about that?
And so we'll start with this. So she said, so you're going to do, the 10 days, the colonics, and you have to get off every one of your prescription drugs. And I just kind of smiled at her and shook my head. And me and my husband got in the car, and I looked at him and I was like, we're never going back. Like, we're not doing this. We're done with her. And he was like, it was the first time he looked at me and said, honey, you're a drug addict. And he's like, I don't mean that. And, you don't take too many. You're not out of hand. You never seek more. But it's been 9 years. So at that point, it was been 9 years. And he's like, you've taken these every day. You're completely addicted. You have to get off of them. You're never going to get better until you get off of them.
Smart.
And I was scared. I was terrified. I wanted nothing to do with this. I'm tearing up right now because it was the first time that I did have to look at it and go, I am addicted. So we decided I had a medical marijuana prescription already. So I asked my iridologist if we could switch to a cannabis oil to kind of replace the sleeping pills, because the sleep was what I was most scared of. I just would lay down without a sleeping pill and lay there until 7 a.m. and then maybe get a couple hours of sleep. So the cannabis oil worked perfectly. I got off all my drugs in like under a week time. I kind of weaned off of them, but just in a week. And I did cannabis oil and I felt great. And I slept through the night. That 10-day cleanse, I took 10 days off of work because I knew that would be rough. And you know what? It really wasn't that hard. Really, the worst part was the colonics every day.
All right. I don't really want to go here, but you did your own colonics.
I would actually go to her house and she would help me with it. It was it wasn't necessarily a colonic, it was a Kalima board, which is like natural gravitation of water that would go through, and we'd do 40 gallons of water a day with anti-parasitic herbs. It was not fun, it was not fun, but if you knew this woman, it would take about 3 or 4 hours every day. I would lay on this plastic board, and she just has this spirit about her and just this energy that just makes you feel so good and so loved. And like, it was amazing. And it was probably day 3, I had a complete breakdown on her table, because you're not eating, you're not that. And I had a lot of trauma and a lot of issues that I needed to deal with from my past. And I cried the whole time. And that was when I really realized that there was a God in this world and that I believed in God. I didn't know that I believed in God at that time of my life. And it was an amazing spiritual event. And I'm crying. But you know what? It really, like, emotional healing. The mind is so powerful. We can eat the very best food and do everything perfect. But if your mind is not there and you just have this negative.
That's where I'm at right now.
And trauma, we have a lot of, like, not everybody, I guess, has trauma in their life, but I definitely had some things from my childhood and my past that I had to deal with. And
I think we all have our share, and we preserve it at different levels. We perceive it at different levels. So, but I have my share as well.
So that 10 days was really amazing. And it was just, I always call it kind of my reset. It really did reset me. I will say I had raging candida, which I already had candida from all the antibiotics and the terrible diet. But after it, my candida was horrible. Every night I would lay down to go to sleep and I would itch for like 2 hours. And it took me a while to figure out what that was, but I think it was candida.
This was after the colon.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just, if I could speak, I'll interject about the colonics. A lot of research is showing now that when you strip the colon of all the good bacteria, you don't know if good bacteria are going to return. Sometimes bad bacteria return. So
So she actually did a every day. I would get a probiotic implant, they would call it, before I would leave there.
Like a suppository.
And yep. And I took tons of probiotics while I was doing it. And for me, I'm not saying, everything, when I talk about my story, it doesn't mean I'm recommending it for you or for anybody else. It's my story. It's what works for me.
It's about some people take it like, oh, I'm going to start that right away. But I just urge everybody to be careful about that.
Yep. But for me, it really helped. And if I just look at those 8 years of antibiotics that I took, my body just needed to get rid of.
Yeah, you were in a broken state. I mean, you were just okay. So
it was a couple months after that then I found the Walls Protocol, and I jumped right in. Her book wasn't even out yet, so I didn't really. All I had was the TED Talk to go off of. I messaged a woman who had a paleo bar company in Bend and said, is there a book you would recommend? What should I do? And she recommended Practical Paleo by Diane Sanfilippo. I don't know if you've ever seen that book. I will say, like, my favorite cookbook. And then the first quarter of the book, at least, is all about why you would go gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, legumes. So the book showed up as I was getting on a flight to go to Texas on a family vacation, my husband and my daughter, and that never happened. My husband and I never went on vacation together. Usually it would just be me and my daughter would go visit my family, and we were all going to visit his family, and the book shows up as we're leaving, and I put it in my backpack and I start reading it on the way there, and I'm not gluten-free at this time. And I start reading it on the airplane, and I was sold. It was just...
Yeah, she was way ahead of her time.
Diane explains it so well, and what this, grains and dairy are doing to us. And I have never eaten gluten purposely since that day. We got on vacation and I jumped right into the paleo diet. I ate meat and veggies the whole trip. My husband's family was like, "What are you doing? This just kind of seems like this crazy diet." Their daughter had just went gluten-free for stomach issues. As we got home on the airplane, they had watched, I cannot remember what movie they watched, which I wish I knew. They watched some food movie while we were flying home, and they called us and said, "We're all going paleo. I think you're onto something. We're gonna do this." And their health has all gotten so much better.
That's so awesome.
Yep. And that was just kind of it. My husband said, we're all gonna do this too. If one of us is eating this way, we all eat this way. We got rid of all the gluten in our house, and
I love this. He's awesome.
He is awesome. He really is. And he is our cook. He did all of our cooking. So, like, when I say real food heals me, you can really say he healed me.
My wife did that too. And what a blessing, because I think, for example, my dad has been trying to quit smoking for 20 years. My stepmom still smokes. He's never going to quit smoking. It's just, so I think having that family support is just second to none.
My husband smoked at this time. Actually, we both were cigarette smokers before then. I had quit right when I met the iridologist.
As was I. And there's research to show the multiple sclerosis and smoking, or they have some.
And we would go to the store. We'd spend $300 on organic food, and my husband would go outside and smoke his organic cigarette. And I was like, "Honey, that doesn't work."
Yeah.
And one day I woke up and he's like, "I quit. I'm done." And he's a super stubborn man. And I was like, he'll never smoke again, because he said out loud, "I'm done." So he'll never do it again, because he always tells the truth.
Wow. Get your husband. We're going to interview him.
Yeah. And it was, and he did really, it was hard the first week, but he really did great. And it was so funny. So we ate no sugar at this time, like none ever. And for my daughter, her kindergarten birthday party at school, you can't bring in your own cupcakes. And, I couldn't make paleo cupcakes and bring them to the kids. So I went to a nice bakery and got gluten-free cupcakes. My husband's like, "Why are you getting whole class gluten-free cupcakes? They're $1 more. Each one is $1 more. Like, this is a $70 batch of cupcakes." Actually, it might have been like $100 in the end for cupcakes for this whole class. And I said, I can't feed anybody gluten. After knowing like what gluten did to my body, I can't give gluten to anybody. I don't care. I know they eat gluten at home, but I'm not buying anybody gluten. Somehow we ended up having a bunch of cupcakes left over, and my husband hadn't had sugar in over a year. and he decides to eat one of these gluten-free cupcakes because they're just sitting in our house. And he eats it, and all of a sudden he starts patting his pocket for his cigarettes. And he hadn't smoked in 9 months at this point. And he was like, wow, sugar is so like, it made me want to, it's the first time I've wanted to smoke.
So just to stop you there, if I can speak, Walls talks about all these sugary non-gluten products, but they replace their flavor with sugar and salt and all this other stuff. So yeah. I don't do that either. It's like, all right, if I'm going to go vegan, I'm not going to have tofurkey. Like, I'm just not going to eat that stuff. And so I'm a big proponent of not trying to replace our old addictions with these because it brings it back. It does for me. If I have a piece,
gluten-free processed food is still processed food.
I couldn't agree with you more. If I were to have like a little piece of chocolate or something, all of a sudden, or if I smoked a cigarette, which I won't ever do because I know that that's a kiss of death. You know, that there comes all that addiction back.
Yep. So Dr. Wall's book still wasn't out yet. And when her book came out, she had a contest. 2 people who bought her book could enter a contest to win a Skype chat with her.
Wow.
I bought the book and I entered the contest and I won.
Get out, really?
Yeah. Oh, it was awesome. It was I think it was at 6 a.m. my time too. I had to get up at 5 a.m. I didn't sleep all night. I was so excited to talk to her. It was like,
because at that point she was a rock star to me. It was like,
right. She is such a rock star to me. And at that time I would say 85, 90% better. Like I felt great all the time. I had just,
your eyesight's better, your tingling's better, your numbness is better, your energy's
better. I've lost probably 80 pounds at that time.
All right, so
I felt great. I was on top of the world.
Now that you know, is that Walls 2, 3, 1? What do you think you're at?
I would say 2. Okay. I was at 2. I still ate, I never gave up maple syrup. I put a little maple syrup in my smoothie every morning. So my main thing was I ate a smoothie like this big every morning. And it was half greens, fruit, a little maple syrup.
So you eliminate all your processed foods. You eliminated your processed sugars other than a little maple syrup.
Yeah.
And you started to eat whole foods.
Yeah. So it was smoothie for breakfast, salad for lunch, meat and roasted veggies for dinner.
How was your digestion at this point? How many snakes were you having regular bowel movements?
I was taking herbs to help with that because I still was. Right. I have an herb that I really like that helped with that. So yeah, I was doing pretty good, and I was still taking my digestive enzymes all the time. I still will take them with like a heavy meat meal. If I eat out at a restaurant, every time I eat at a restaurant, I take a gluten enzyme just in case that there's any cross-contamination of gluten.
Okay.
So when I won this talk with Dr. Walls, I was good, but I knew I could be better. So I was planning on starting the autoimmune paleo diet. Okay. And no nightshades, no eggs, no nuts, no seeds, all of that. I had never given up just eggs because I didn't have the Walls Protocol book yet. So when me and Dr. Walls were talking, she said, you know what, will you just give up eggs for 90 days and not nightshades and nuts and seeds? You're doing so good. You're so much I don't think you need to go that far. I really don't recommend anybody give up any more foods than what I suggest without at least working with a nutritionist to monitor their macronutrients and micronutrients and things, because that's a lot of stuff to start giving up vegetables.
Yeah, she talks about it.
And, I was convinced that eggs were fine for me because I had eaten eggs that whole time and I was 80% better. And we raised our own chickens. We lived in town, but we had, legally you could have 4. We might've had 6, but we always called them 4 chickens in the backyard. They ate all organic food. I was convinced eggs were fine for me, but I gave them up for 90 days because when Dr. Walls tells you to your face, to do something, you do it. Right?
Absolutely.
And on that 90 days, I was super excited. We made some paleo bread that had eggs in it, and then we turned it into French toast with great eggs. And I was super excited. We ate them, and within 20 minutes, I could barely see. My eyes nerves were so inflamed.
Wow.
That I could see kind of just my optic neuritis was back. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that it can be that fast, like 20 minutes after eating it. And
from 80 to 90% better backwards.
Yep, eggs are out. Eggs are out. So eggs were gone. For some reason, I wasn't okay with eggs being gone forever. And so at that time, I had another talk with Dr. Walls. Dr. Walls did a Lyme disease cleanse that I was a part of. She was a speaker on a Lyme disease cleanse, and we all got to ask her questions. So I asked her, I said, I hear that if you heal your gut, you can bring eggs back. Or like sometimes food sensitivities will go away. So what can I do to heal my gut? And she was like, why do you care about eggs so much? Just give them up. It doesn't matter. It's just an egg. And I was like, nope, I'm sorry. I want to bring eggs back. It does matter to me.
Because you have an emotional connection to eggs.
I know. I guess because I loved raising chickens. We still had these chickens. Like I like making paleo bread. I couldn't, I wanted to bring eggs back. So in the back of my head, I would. And I worked really hard on healing my gut, lots of bone broth, meat stock. I did add some aloe juice. I did some herbs at one time. And I did bring eggs back. I have no reaction to eggs anymore at all.
Now that you're healthy, now that your gut is right.
Yep. And dairy, I'll admit, I always try dairy every few months. I would try some cheese. I have a huge cheese addiction. And the same thing, I would lose my eyesight instantly with any type of dairy. And that no longer happens. I don't eat cheese all day long, but I can eat a good raw dairy with no
raw
at all.
And that's in the A2.
Yes, A2 dairy from like a good Jersey cow.
Yes, that's a special breed of cow she's talking about. And raw, meaning non-pasteurized,
yep.
which is illegal.
Not in Oregon. In Oregon, they have stipulations to it. Yes. You can't just go to a store and buy it, but you can get it. And so we actually, like my daughter, so my daughter was grown on antibiotics. She's pretty healthy. She's never had antibiotics herself. She never got ear infections and such when she was a kid, but her digestive system is very, very sensitive. And
so you put the milk in for the probiotics for the healing potential?
Yep. I met a guy who did a raw milk cure. He was dying of malnutrition because he couldn't, even IV nutrients, he couldn't absorb. He's a veteran, so the VA hospital sent him home on hospice and just said, you're going to die. He was bleeding out of his pores. He was so malnutritioned. And my friends who own a raw dairy farm said, you know what, we'll bring you fresh milk every single day. It has to be fresh from the cow, but there's this thing called the raw milk cure. Let's just try it. What do you got to lose? And I met him on day 82. And I actually met him at the Vaxxed. There was a movie called Vaxxed, and they had a bus that went all around the country getting people's vaccine injury stories. And they came to my friend's raw milk dairy farm, and he came out to be interviewed. And it was day 82, and all he had drank was raw milk in 82 days. He hadn't had anything else. And he was perfectly healthy and strong and scared to introduce food. He said, it's time now that I introduce food, but I'm scared of it just because I feel so good right now. So I'm not saying that milk is for everybody.
Right.
Dairy and MS usually do not go together and is not a thing, but I do not believe, one thing. So I am a nutritional therapist. I went to school at the Nutritional Therapy Association. And one of the biggest things that they teach us is bioindividuality. Not one person is exactly the same, and everybody thrives on different things. And I truly believe that. So like I'll be honest, I use the Walls protocol mostly in my practice because it's what I know and I know that it works. But even with those people, I really use it as a template. Like, we're going to do this for 90 days. And then you can add back in eggs. You can try, you can slowly add back in things. Gluten is the one food that I truly don't believe anybody needs to eat. So then I did another training with Dr. Tom O'Brien. I don't know if you're familiar with him. I really, really like him. He's got a book out. He does a series. He does a lot of video series. Betrayal is a great video series he did on autoimmune disease. You should look for it on YouTube. And he's been using a gluten-free diet since the 1970s for women who couldn't get pregnant.
Repeat that again.
Dr. Tom O'Brien, and he did a series called Betrayal. And he, so I took a course with him, and I'm a certified gluten practitioner. Trained through him too. He is an amazing guy. Like, you just sit with him, and he's kind, he's gracious, he's smart. He just has an amazing thing about him. But he realized in the 70s, his wife didn't get pregnant. And somebody said, you know what, put her on a gluten-free diet. And he's a chiropractor. And he's like, that's crazy, a gluten-free diet. He put her on a gluten-free diet and she got pregnant. And somehow he got known as the guy who could get women pregnant. And every one of them that he put on a gluten-free diet got pregnant.
So this is a good time to talk about. You went to a restaurant at one time, you told me. And yeah, tell us that story, because I think that there's a point to be made on that.
I would say it was about 2.5 years into my healing, and I was in complete remission. I felt great. I was actually going to the nutritional therapy practitioner conference where Dr. Walls would be speaking at that conference. I stopped at a restaurant in Portland, Oregon, who the owner follows an autoimmune paleo diet for his arthritis and is in remission. They have gluten buns. It's the only thing they have really in the restaurant with gluten, but they have it. And they make a baked sweet potato fry. And I'm eating my sweet potato fries, and I grab something and I eat it, and it's super crunchy and just different than the fry. And I'd say it was just a little chunk of bun had fallen into the pan.
Wow.
And got baked. And, I thought it was kind of weird, but I didn't think much of it. And I got up to leave, and my eyesight went, my balance went. Like, I had a hard time walking out to my car, and I knew that it was gluten. Like, I just knew it was gluten. I got in my car, and I've never liked driving very much. I've never liked bridges, but I'd never had a panic attack in a car. And I had to drive over a double-decker bridge to get over to Washington from Portland. And I got on this double-decker bridge, and it's rush hour traffic. Traffic stopped, and I had the worst panic attack ever. Like, I really almost just stopped my car to have like a police officer come and get me off the bridge. But then I knew I had to get off the bridge. So I kept going, get off the bridge, get off the bridge. I got off the bridge. I made it, and my eyesight came back. My balance came back. I was okay. I made it through the 3-day weekend because I was so excited to be at this nutrition conference with people like Dr. Walls. Joel Salatin was there. There were some amazing people there. I met Dr. Walls for the first time. It was so funny when I walk into the dining room where she is eating, and I look at her, and I actually had to run out to the bathroom to cry real quick. I got the crying out, and then I came back in and met her.
Dr. Walls. I fell in love with her I fell in love with her before. Let me say this. But the first time I met her, she looked at me, and she must have like an empathic to quality. She looked at me and said, you know what, Ron, we do all we could do, and that's all we could do. Like, she just has this, like, I don't know, this aura about her.
Yeah, she's like, I would never look at a movie star like, she is like my movie star. If that makes, like, if you got to meet the biggest person in your life.
Because everybody was fawning about her, so I didn't. I waited to the next day, and I came up to her. I said, Dr. Walls, I'm your biggest fan, and she must have saw my videos or whatever. And so I just want to shake your hand. She said, shake my hand, give me a hug. And she gave me a kiss and a hug. And she was just, I was like, wow, I love you. She was just real. And
yep.
And that was at the Walls Protocol seminar. Oh my God. Not that I'm trying to push anything, but that was life-changing, not only for Walls, but for
yeah. I go to my first Walls Protocol seminar this summer, and I'm super excited. And luckily, I've been lucky now to meet Dr. Walls a few times, because she's come to that conference a couple times. And I do some customer service work for her now. I do Facebook stuff for her, and that's how I officially met her, though, was at that conference that year, and how I got connected with her. And
so take us back a little bit. So now you're eating, you're feeling good.
So we're at that conference, where I got gluten. I didn't lose feeling in my legs that whole 3-day weekend. Like, I did okay. I made it home. I woke up in the morning, my first night home, and I had no feeling in my legs. And we're talking no feeling, like totally gone. I couldn't believe it. I could still walk, but it was just, I don't know if you know that feeling of
Oh yeah.
somehow you still walk, but you just don't know what you're doing. And I trip over things and run into walls. And
My feet would feel like sponges. Like I was they were there, but they weren't really there, right?
I just kept thinking, like, it'll just be, if, tomorrow I'll wake up and it'll be fine. It went on for 9 months. It took 9 months to have my legs completely back.
So that's the point I wanted to make, and I've been guilty of the same thing. Well, not that you inadvertently did it, but I would purposely. Well, I feel great. I could have a little gluten, but the research shows that if you are sensitive, and whether you're allergic or not, that's irrelevant. But if you're sensitive and you have the gluten you're exposed to, it could take 6 months to a year before it's processed. So don't. I was fooled enough thinking, well, I could just have it this week and then I'll go back next week. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it's the biggest thing I recommend. Like, you go gluten free and you go gluten free forever. And you know what? They now know, they did a study recently where it wasn't gluten, it was gliadin, which is in gluten foods. Gliadin causes intestinal permeability in every single person that eats it. So every person who eats gluten, your gut gets a little bit leaky, and then a few hours later it goes back to being tight. And then you eat it again, it gets a little bit leaky, and then back to tight. That day that it doesn't go back, you're looking at autoimmune disease. So gluten is the one food that I have no issue telling every single person not to eat.
Just to be done with it.
Yep, everybody. And every person I've ever worked with, and this means family too, who doesn't really have health problems even, that gets off gluten, always feels better. In a couple months, they're like, wow, I just didn't even know you could feel this good. And it's amazing. Like, I have a family member who had not really bad asthma, but he would have asthma attacks, like when he had seasonal allergies or if he was anywhere near a cat. We were on a vacation once and we were in a house that the cat had lived 5 years prior. And he left after 3 days because he felt like he was going to die. He couldn't breathe from a cat living in a house 5 years before that. He decided to go gluten-free just to support a family member with an autoimmune disease. He was going to do it for 30 days. After 30 days, he felt super good. So he's like, I'm not going to go back. In a year, he realized, he said, you know what? I haven't used my inhaler in months. I was in a house with a cat last week and I didn't use my inhaler. That can't be gluten, can it? And I was like, it was absolutely gluten. So, like, the gluten was always causing you this much histamine, and then the cat was causing you this much histamine, and you're over the top. You got rid of the gluten, so now you're just like here with your seasonal allergies and the cats. And so I truly think everybody in the world can give up gluten and be healthier.
So many people argue with me about, well, gluten, they had it in the Bible, gluten this, gluten that. But you can clarify this, but the gluten, the wheat we have today is not even close to what it was years ago.
No.
It's not GMO. The wheat germ was there. I mean, there was no glyphosates. I mean, you could clarify it more, but I mean, this is not the same thing.
I don't believe it is the same thing. It's more glutinous than it was before. We are spraying a lot of the non-organic wheat is being sprayed with glyphosate before harvest. They found if they spray it with glyphosate 3 to 5 days before harvest, it falls off easier. It doesn't clog up their equipment. It makes for an easier harvest. Some people will say that's not true, but you can actually go to Monsanto's page and it talks about how this works for wheat farming. Wheat is not supposed to be genetically modified that we sell and grow in the United States, but it has been made. It's never been approved to be grown, but yet they have found it in Oregon and Washington in fields where the people say, we don't know how this got here. So it's hard to know what it is, but I'm not a fan of genetically modified food. I don't believe it's a natural food that we were meant to eat. I think the immune system looks at food that's not natural and goes, what are you doing? So, I think that's a huge part of my healing was giving up all GMO foods.
That's great.
And, so my only 2 food sensitivities left are corn and soy, or no, gluten and soy. Corn, I can't. I do corn chips occasionally now. I try to only do organic. I try to stick if I'm going to have a treat, because you can have corn on Walls Level 1. I try to stick to popcorn, actually, because for some reason they've never genetically modified popcorn. So even like Orville Redenbacher, non-organic, is GMO-free verified.
Wait,
I still always buy organic.
say that again.
They've never genetically modified the popcorn. Like that strain of corn has never been genetically modified.
Okay, that's awesome.
I don't recommend popcorn. Is not something I could eat when I was healing. But I'd like to. Everyone should like. I've been doing the Walls protocol for 5 years. So I really, after 5 years and working with a nutritional therapist, I have added in things that work for my body that I wouldn't recommend for everybody else.
I'm just going to answer his question, because I am Catholic and I do take a communion wafer, which is wheat based, but I don't take that. And they offer a non-gluten wafer, but it's got some gluten in it. So
it does have yours has gluten in it.
Yeah, because by Catholic law, it has to have some. So what they did is they filtered out the gluten, so it has very little. So what you can do is you just ask for the celiac cup, which is the wine or the precious blood, and so I don't deal with the wafers
Okay.
Um,
I don't go to a Catholic church, but I go to a church where we do. And it just so happens our pastor's wife is gluten-free. And so we only have gluten-free cracker as an option.
I can't speak for that, but I know in a Catholic church it has to have some essence of wheat in it.
Okay. That breaks my heart. It really does, because it truly only takes a trace.
So my pastor and many others, you could have, because, all right, this is something I don't want to get into, because I know religion is very polarizing and I'm not trying to recommend one or another, but you could have, there's two parts of the Eucharist for the Catholics. They have the bread and the wine. So each one is, like I'm getting religious here, but each one, it contains all what we're trying to do, right? So if you have the wine, then you don't ever have the gluten. So that's what I do. But there we go. So totally off the topic.
Yeah.
Okay. So bring us now. I mean, I saw a picture and I thought I had the picture. I can't find it. But of you on the beach with your daughter, like running, and that
was a good trip.
I gotta tell you, it brought tears to my eyes. And I used to be a pretty tough guy in the military, but now I'm not. And that's the one thing my wife and I so dearly miss, is being able to do that. So bring us up to date. Where are you at now, Beth?
Gosh, that was probably 3 years into my journey. That was a great trip. We walked to the point of where I could barely walk back to the condo. We walked maybe 9 miles on the beach that day, back and forth. And I will say, like, I was wrecked at the end of it, but I was also fine. Every, muscle in my body hurt, but I was fine when I woke up in the morning. No issues, no problem. I really don't have, I'm not as strong. I don't exercise. I'll be honest. It's my huge downfall. I walk and I hike and I love being out in nature and doing stuff like that. But if I would go to the gym 5 days a week, I would be Superwoman. I would.
So my wife is a therapist, and exercise, we should break it down to movement, right? Yeah. And so is the gym right for everybody? Absolutely not. Is running everybody? No, I think nobody should be running. So if you're moving, God bless, that's good. Great.
I should move more though. I beat myself up about it a little bit, but it's just not something I enjoy. And gosh, do I just really love to enjoy myself all the time.
Well, you walk 9 miles on the beach, and that's pretty impressive. But you said something before, and I'm not going to take too much time because we went way over, but you said something before that the mental aspect is hugely important. And I'm only learning that I'm kind of ashamed to say it, in the last couple months. I've always known that, but I've never embraced it. And so now I'm starting to speak to that a little bit.
I think the mind is powerful. What you say to yourself is going to happen. So, like, especially in the Lyme disease world, we have so many people who say, I have chronic Lyme disease. This is what it is. I'm never going to get better. And my answer to that is you will get exactly what you ask for. If you keep saying that you're never going to get better, you're never going to get better. You have to believe in healing.
So in the psychological world, they call that self-fulfilling prophecy. So they know that medically speaking, what you say is what's going to become.
Yeah, well, I love, there's a video, another TED Talk on a doctor who says, how do we not believe the mind can heal you? The placebo effect. Just look at every drug trial that there is. There's always a placebo and it always works some of the time.
So the medical community will write it off, excuse me, as just the placebo effect. No, it's not just. It is. And there's a reason for that. And it's what you're saying.
Yeah. So we really did go over time. I really wanted to share my shirt though before. So this was the school that I went to, and it says, I believe in real food. And I do have to give a shout out to the Nutritional Therapy Association because they are 100% all about what we do. They love Dr. Walls. They're sponsoring her seminar this year. Any nutritional therapist that does her coaching class gets their full 2 years continued education credits.
So repeat that again with the website. It just so people can go.
Nutritionaltherapyassociation.com, I think, is their website, and they do trainings all over the United States, Australia, Hawaii.
So if you Google Nutritional Therapy
Association,
you'll find it.
Yes. And
I talked to Walls about that, and she thought any education you could do is profoundly impactful.
Yeah, Dr. Walls is a big fan of what they do, and they're a big fan of what she does. So and there's nutritional therapy practitioners all over the United States. You can find a practitioner from their website. And I think I work with one myself, and I think they're fabulous because being your own nutritional therapist isn't always the best thing.
Absolutely. I'm going to put a couple pictures and I'm going to ask you your website. But this is me before I started at Walls. I was 129 pounds.
Wow.
I really thought I was dying,
Was that when you were on Swank?
Yeah, when I was on Swank. I don't want to bash Swank.
No, it's a real food diet to that, but I'm just going to say my opinion on it is the myelin that's damaged in MS is primarily fat.
No.
How can fat not be important for us?
I don't mind bashing Swank. I think it's wrong because they're telling us that exactly. So I was doing the whole no fat diet thing. And and when I started to eat real foods and eat fats, I mean, everything changed. And so I don't work out because I want muscle. I work out because I'm trying to change my neuroplasticity and get healthy. So I totally agree with you. Fat isn't as important as anything else.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk. I'm trying to find. I don't know. It's kind of a mess here. I'm trying to find your website because I want people to be able to get in touch with you.
And I meant to ask you this yesterday. Have you, like, from being a dentist and working with some things that aren't the healthiest, have you done a good amount of detox? And I think the Wells Protocol alone is a detox because it's real, clean, organic food.
That's an interesting question. I think mercury testing is like what you said, Lyme disease. Like they could take my blood, they could do all this, and they say, "Oh, you don't have mercury." Well, we lived in mercury.
People who don't detox it are holding on to it, and it wouldn't show up in testing a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly, because it's in your tissues. So the Walls Protocol, I know, and I went through all this. I'm like, well, should I do chelation therapy? I totally don't believe in that. I don't know if you could speak some to that.
I don't know enough about it because it was just something that, like, my iridologist never would have done. To take one chemical to get rid of one chemical makes no sense to her.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I like the infrared sauna.
Yeah. So the Walls protocol is detox.
Yep.
It's just a different way. So just all the things she's doing, you know, the garlics, the sulfur vegetables, all that, that's my detox.
Yep.
So I haven't went and did the chelation or any of the other aggressive stuff because then what they show in the chelation, it pulls the mercury out of your tissues, it puts it somewhere else. So some people get sicker. On that note, I think we should talk a little bit about oh boy, we're so over time. Maybe we'll do silver fillings another time.
Sorry.
Yeah, but that's
I'm a
good.
talker, I told you.
No, there's so much to be said, and it's so cool that you're out there doing this because I mean, people really need it. I mean, I needed it. You were there when I needed it, and you didn't even realize it. I think it's really, really good. Um, so detoxing, yes. Walls says her detox is 9 cups of vegetables, the sulfurs, the all those type of things.
Yeah.
So we could do that. I want to
And
prep
it
you.
took me a long time to build up to an infrared sauna, but in my healing, probably a year into food, then we went to an infrared sauna weekly, ionic foot bath, which is very controversial. People say it doesn't work. It worked for me. And there is a couple people using it in autistic kids right now who can't detox their metals either, and they are finding the ionic foot bath to be super helpful. And hopefully they'll be releasing. They've been urine testing the kids and seeing that it is helping them get rid of metals, and especially for people who can't detox.
Wow, that's great. So tell me about
Pure water. I think the water you drink is super important. And Dr. Walls does talk about reverse osmosis water in her
we
book.
just we just put one in. It's $199 on Amazon. My son and I did it. It took us a half hour. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
And so then I recommend if you're going to do water like that, though, you are removing the minerals from your water.
Right.
So just add more salt, real salt, Himalayan salt. We do something they call Soleil. It's salt water. I take a teaspoon of salt water every morning.
Yeah.
And I've had my minerals tested in my hair, and I was a little bit short on magnesium, which most of the world is.
So just to go into that, because that's a really good point. So the keto flu, if people are entering into this ketotic type diet, is for a lack of salt and minerals. No, yeah, 5 milligrams. I'm sorry, 5 grams of salt a day, which is a teaspoon, is something that's highly necessary. We even went, in medical school. They talk about salt, and this was 30 years ago. They said, you know what, your kidneys, if they're healthy, should with the process a pound of, not a pound, but as much salt. So you're not going to hurt yourself unless you're a brittle diabetic or you have high blood pressure. So yeah, I'm a big fan of what you just said. Absolutely.
Yep. And we actually, we drank distilled water for the first 4 years of our healing journey, and people say distilled water will kill you. You can see I'm not killed, and distilled water removes all the minerals. But
Okay.
my diet, I get my minerals from my diet and my salt.
Yeah. So would you say that water is not the best source for minerals anyways? I mean,
I don't believe it is.
there's other
And
great sources.
yeah,
My family used to give me a banana and said, "Oh, you got to eat your bananas. It's potassium." I'm like, okay, but there's a lot of better sources of potassium.
yeah.
Um, I mean, okay. Here, I'm going to put your website up because I know people will be like, all right, this is enough.
Yeah, so it's just BethSchultz.com.
BethSchultz.com.
Yeah.
And you tell me a little bit more about what you do. You see patients online, offline.
Clients, because I'm not a doctor, so I can't, they're not my patient, they're a client. I don't diagnose or treat disease. I just help people get their diet right.
Understood. Okay.
I feel I do a good job. I love I love working with people one-on-one. There's so much, like, you start with diet, and if it's not working right, if you don't have your digestion right and you're not absorbing any of the awesome food that you're eating, nothing's going to change. So we really work on the foundations, is what we call them in school.
So it's not what you eat, but what you absorb, Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Super important. So we learn the foundations in school, which is a nutrient dense diet, digestion, blood sugar, hydration, liver, gallbladder health, health. I'm not thinking of all the foundations right now, but just, so we really start with diet and then digestion, and then you have to look at the adrenals, your blood sugar.
Great. Okay. And you're also the administrator of the Walls Protocol on Facebook. So people
Yep.
can kind of look for advice there. I know
Yeah,
you're
that group is over 20,000 now. And for 20,000 people, we are so kind and nice. And like, there is very little arguing.
truly, truly are. I'm always impressed by that. And you
Yeah.
know what? I've also noticed, Beth, and probably to your credit, when I used to look at that site 4 years ago, it was a lot of misinformation. But the IQ, the nutrition IQ of that site now, people know their stuff. It's awesome,
Yeah.
and it's really cool. Okay.
And I try never to like police conversations. I really try to let people say what they would like to say. I do put up a reminder every once in a while to remind people, don't believe everything you read on, always do your own research before you're going to make a choice, because
Absolutely. And there's a lot of fine research, not only Dr. Walls, which is my go-to, but like you said, the GAPS diet with Natasha. I mean, there's so many different resources that are all
yeah,
saying the same thing, maybe in a little different way.
yeah.
So,
I got to see Dr. Natasha and Dr. Walls together do a panel on nutrition, and that was a pretty awesome thing. And then later that night, they danced together on the dance floor, and that was pretty awesome.
I saw that online and I'm like, oh my God. It was like having like Elton John and like, whoever I did together.
Yep.
I was so, starstruck by that. Okay. Not to give a plug for Dr. Walls, but I guess we will. The seminar is coming up in August. You're going to be teaching a course or
We're
administrating.
going to do like a nighttime thing for the coaches to, practice their coaching skills, and everybody that comes will be allowed to be there too and get.
And you're going to be there.
Yep.
Which is awesome. Okay. I hope to be there. It's tough time for me because of August start school, but I'll be there.
Really? I hope so, because I'm super excited.
Down south, the kids start school so early here. So my wife's like, so I committed to Walls. I'm supposed to give a talk too. So,
Okay.
so I gave my word. I could tell my tales of woe, but, so I'm excited about that. It's expensive. It's all this stuff. It is, but the people I met, and I'm going to give a shout out to Kana, and to Dr. Waldman, and who says he makes fun of me because I always mispronounce his name, and Tony Fiaro. I met these three, and we've developed this incredible support group. There isn't a day that goes by that we don't talk diet, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness. So it wasn't only the speakers and the people that we heard, which were incredible, but the connections we've made and sharing. I thought the Walls Protocol seminar was just a pity party. We're all going to sit there and cry about our MS. It's not that. Everybody there is amazing like you and full of inspiration. So, if possible, I urge, people to go. She also said something there that's kind of stuck with me, and I want to just pass this along to you, everybody watching, is that she says, read her book once, read it twice, read it 3 times, read it 4. I every time I pick up that book, I pick up a different piece of information.
It's
Yeah.
always right next to me. And so I answer Dr. Wall's customer service emails. And so I have to have it for, people all the time are like, well, where did they talk about this? Where do they talk about that? And really I can't ever give people any type of nutrition advice on her email, which people ask for all the time. It's really quite sad.
Right.
Because we can't, this is an email. You're not a patient. We can't give you advice, but I will always tell people you can find it on the book, page 139.
Correct. I've written a lot of articles. I've taught for a long time. It's a brilliant book. And you peel back layers of the onions. So you may read it once and get one message, read it again. So I urge that. And what's awesome is if you have any questions, you could join possibly one of her websites or
Yeah.
the Wallace Protocol. There are ways, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people say to me, well, I can't do it because I can't afford to have organic. I can't afford grass fed. Well, she started it in the VA hospital with people that are on a fixed income. They couldn't afford it either, but they still recovered. So there are ways.
Yeah.
I buy our vegetables on sale and I freeze them. I throw them in a blender or whatever. Like there are ways. I don't want anybody to think that they can't do this because it
I
is.
work at an organic farm 1 day a week and trade for produce because our food bill hurts. It really does.
Yeah, we got 5 kids and they're getting up in age now and they just like wolf down stuff. I'm like, my God. But yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you the last word because I'm just so happy that you came on and just so informational and you continue to inspire so many. So I guess the last word I ask you could say what you want, but like there's many people here that have been doing a Wallace protocol for many, many years and they're great at it. But what about the new people, the new diagnosed people, the people that are scared? What advice do you have for them?
Gosh, breathe, take a deep breath. Don't stress about being perfect. Like, I never ate my 3 exact cups of colors every single day or counted them. I just ate as many veggies as I could. Stay away from gluten and dairy completely and eat your veggies. And go, like, when you're first starting out, just don't stress about being perfect because being perfect is tough.
Waltz even talks about that as developing almost a mental disorder by being so OCD about this. She says it's not what she's trying to do. She's trying,
No.
yeah.
And yeah, you do the best you can, but there are like gluten, you just can't play around with it. One bite of gluten can mean 6 months of not healing. And if you're having gluten every single month, once a month, you may never heal. It's that bad.
Amen. Amen. Beth, thank you. You're doing an awesome
Thank
job.
you.
I hope we could do this again and we could really get into some nitty gritty like silver fillings and
Yeah, and thank you for doing all of these talks. You are seriously helping the community.
people ask me all the time why. I said, well, when I started this whole thing, I mean, I couldn't feel my hands. I had to stop working. I couldn't speak. If you look at those pictures, I was dying. And so I doubt Walls pays you. She certainly doesn't pay me. And I'm
Well,
just,
she does pay me because I'm on staff.
well, you're a little different. Yeah. So,
But I didn't get paid. I don't get paid for
yeah, right.
recommending her.
That's what I'm trying to say is that this, the only reason I do it, the only reason you do it is because it profoundly has changed me, changed my life, changed my family's life. And it's like the truth. It's like, I just want to spread the word. So
Me too.
that's it. You're awesome, Beth. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks, Rob.
Everybody have a good day.
I will. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.